Every year, World Environment Day is observed globally on 5th of June. It is celebrated to mark the importance of nature and the environment, and it also gives out a message to the global population that nature should not be undervalued and it should not be taken for granted at any cost. In this year, World Environment Day is focused on solution to plastic pollution under the campaign Beat Plastic Pollution. So let's celebrate the occasion of World Environment Day by working together to save our planet from everything that harms it. The Green Building Council of Sri Lanka has planned GBCSL Environment Week with valuable panel discussions and awareness session, and also online green quiz competition for undergraduate. To celebrate World Environment Day, and we think that you can get a lot out of those sessions. So without taking much more time, now we move on our session today. Actually, it's a great pleasure and honor for me to introduce our resource person who is going to talk to us about plastics in construction. He is none other than Professor Sarath Kotagama. Professor Sarath Kotagama is an Emeritus Professor of Environment Science, the Department of Zoology, University of Colombo, Sri Lanka, and he is the leading ornithologist in Sri Lanka, as well as he was a recipient of many awards for his exemplary service, including the Vidya Jyoti Award. And furthermore, he received President Science Award for 2006, 2007, 2008, 2009, 2010, 2011, and 2012 for science publication of international standards. Last but not least, Professor Kotagama is a former director, Department of Wildlife Conservation of Sri Lanka. So, dear sir, I warmly invite you to share your valuable knowledge today's session. Dear sir, over to you.
Thank you very much, Sandeepa. First, thank you very much for inviting me, and good evening to all of you. A very important day, the World Environment Day. What I would like to go through is to first establish why and when we were formed, or when it happened, the World Environment Day, a background to the principles and causes that resulted in it all the time today, on the issues of the environment, which leads us directly to the plastic issue as the theme for the year. So let me go directly into my slides. Wait a minute. Okay. I hope you can see my slide.
Yes, sir, we can see.
Yeah, but you have to bear the sounds of the back. I don't think I can stop that child. So we'll try to run through with all those. Right. So once again, Ayubowan. Today is the World Environment Day, the 5th of June. Now, this has been established since 1994, even though the history goes back, 1974, history goes back to 1972 and beyond. And the theme for this year, Beat Plastic Pollution, and my discussion or my talk for you all today being very much in the Green Building Council, I thought I will try to touch on constructions and plastics. Right, many years ago, this is what I said. I said in Sinhala, Parisaraya ගැන නොසිතා දියත් කළ හැම ව්‍යාපෘතියක් අවසානයේදීම ඊට වඩා වැඩි බරක් පරිසරයේ ප්‍රතිසංස්කරණය සඳහා යෙදවීමට සිදු වී තිබෙනවා. That everything that we have done without considering the environment, at the end of the day, has been a cost for the environment. And I think one of the best examples for that, despite the fact that what we are doing is very beneficial, or feeling that it helps us a lot in terms of its use, is plastic. Almost like 70 years ago, when we realized that the byproducts of petrochemical could be converted into this so-called plastic, which can be used for multi-purpose, and ever since developing different kinds of plastics for different purposes, we have added more of a concern into our environment, despite the fact that we must all agree, however, that it has made our life very, very convenient and good in a sense. In some people, we know today that the plastics have become the lifesavers of their immediate life and into the future also. Some may be carrying parts of plastic in their body because that way the system keeps functioning for them. So it's a two side of the same mirror. One side is good, the other side is bad, and yet we need to understand there are some unexpected or unconcerned results of its use, which is causing us the concerns of today. So let us reflect on the reasons for all of this. We start about the current concerns about the environment way back in the 60s, when there was a famine and we needed to produce more food. And again, we came up with solutions which really got us out of that mess. And that was through the use of high toxic chemicals that fought against those species that were taking away our products, which is the grains that we were to harvest. And we also used it to increase our production. So using fertilizers, toxic chemicals of pesticides, biocides, etc., we were able to overcome the famine. And we thought, yes, this is probably the way that we should go forward. And we know that, again, that's another area in the environment which has costed us a lot, and yet it has also provided us a lot of benefit. So how do we balance all of these things? This is the real issue with the environment concern. We had Rachel Carson. She was a marine biologist, but she saw something about what we were doing in the early 60s and wrote this publication, Silent Spring. It is really considered as the first publication on or about the environmental concerns of human activity. And she asked a very simple question from the title itself. It is that if we get up in the morning and we don't hear the normal calls of the birds, and what would it be? But if it was a silent spring, what would it be our situation? If you know that if suddenly your environment becomes silence, there's one of two things that will happen. One is that, being inquisitive and concerned about what resulted, you may want to inquire about what it is and go towards it or go to it. But the bigger reaction is that we get frightened and we run away. So do we want that to happen to the planet? Was the simple story she wrote using the insecticide, pesticide, biocide, fertilizer users. That caused this person, who's called Gaylord Nelson, Senator Gaylord Nelson, to bring together the first environment concern protest of holding hands and coming together in the US. Now, being a senator of the US government, he was able to also muster the help of everywhere there was a US government embassy. So I would say that it happened in Sri Lanka also on the 22nd of April, and I am happy to say that I was part of that placard holding session in front of the US embassy, where we were given permission to do that. And we did participate in saying that we should not be doing these things at all. The main themes were, of course, again, pollution, agricultural pollution, and other concerns about, subtly about other concerns of waste and misuse and things like that. But there was nothing about plastics in that story at that time. Millions of people have apparently joined in the US, and it became a huge issue, which then subsequently is today commemorated as Earth Day on 22nd of April. This triggered the United Nations to talk about the environment on the 5th of June, 3rd to 5th of June in Stockholm, on the UN Conference on Human Environment. The themes of those conferences, the global conferences, were very interesting. the symbol that you see at the background there was considered the only one Earth symbol for the planet, and the human being the only species that is there. So it was a conference on human environment. And one of the key elements, the key decisions that were taken is very significant in today's terms. The third world spokesperson was Madam Indira Gandhi. So around 72, that is the non-aligned nations and China plus many other countries come to the third world participants, and they came together under the banner with Madam Indira Gandhi as the spokesperson. This is what she said: "We who are part of nature and dependent on her for every need speak constantly about exploiting nature, exploiting nature. On the one hand, the rich look askance at our continuing poverty. The rich, that is the developed world, looks askance at our continuing poverty. On the other, they warn us against their own methods, that is the development methods. And she posed, are not poverty and need the greatest polluters. And this carried through in the global conference. And it was decided that if we were to get out of the prevailing environmental problem of the time, that is in the 70s or 60s, 70s, the developing countries must find themselves in a developed state. They must transform, they must change to become developed. And in that process, the real problems of the environment would be gone. Now just think of it. If you know of what Sri Lanka was at that time, which I think many of you all would not, but that is exactly what was happening. And see some of the problems that we are burdened with today, which are results of what happened during that time. We know that the forest cover came down rapidly after independence in this country. And at the same time, the development model of the time, the economic development model of the time, was what we were sort of promoting to be how life should become and become for the future, meant that you had to earn something. You had to get finances or money into your hand to survive for the future. And to do that, unfortunately, the development process or the advancement of standards of living for people to earn was very, very poor. So those in the rural areas had one of two choices. They had to do something which is we call agriculture or some other job, let's say, put it in very inverted commas, and try to get something out of that activity. If not, they had to go to a place where the so-called jobs are available or the places which will give them the finances for survival. And that actually happened at the time. And we found a lot of the rural person migrating into the cities of the time. Basically, let's say in Sri Lanka, it was Colombo. And in Colombo, that type of migrant or the moving people was welcome, because there were a lot of things that needed to be done with manpower. And the manpower was very, very important. If you go to Fort, the Natamis or the people who cart the goods around in the city in Fort or from the harbor outwards, and then from there into the different shops and all of that being done in those huge structures. And many other things required a lot of manpower, and this manpower infiltrated into the city from outside. Now imagine, where would all of these people who come into the city after having performed their task of labor rest in the night? Would those who employed them provide them the opportunity to come to their houses and sleep through? It didn't happen. And we know our shanties in the city of Colombo evolved through that process. And if you know that more than 55% of the members of the Colombo are such personnel who came into the city of that time in the late 60s and 70s. And in the village, they were cutting down the trees. The very good scientific forest use system, which is called Chena, was corrupted to a point of what we now call slash and burn, destroying the very base that provided in the past the opportunities of survival through cultivation. The Chena system is very, very scientific. I would invite all of you to read those in the history and understand. If you want, there is an article which I did on behalf of Professor A. Vijayawardena in the 100 Years Agriculture publication, because it was needed to be done in Sinhala, and Professor A. Vijayawardena, being a very close associate of me in the environmental side, said, you should do it, I'll give you all the wherewithal. And it was done. And it is really at that point that I really did also understand the very, very important, significant Chena cultivation practice of the historic times. But it was converted into this destructive slash and burn system. So the village environment was getting destroyed. The urban environment was getting overcrowded and corrupted in terms of people coming for employment. And there we had two very significant environmental problems within. Why? Because people were poor. So this is precisely what Madam Indira Gandhi was trying to say. This was very much the same in almost every developing country of the time. So what was the solution? Since poverty, the cause for environment degradation, they recommended developing through international funding or assistance. Why? Because the developed countries had the means for the purpose, while the developing countries didn't have the means, which is the cash, the money, for the purpose. So they agreed that we will transfer funds to the developing countries for them to develop. Hold on, behold, what happens 10 years later? In 1982, we come back to Nairobi, which is the place where the headquarters for the United Nations Environment Program, which was offshoot of the 1972 World Environment Program, discussion of Stockholm happened. And we discussed as to where did we go in the 10 years after 1972. All the problems in terms of environment that existed in the developed countries were now present in the developed countries. What does it tell you? That we have probably transformed that problems from the developed country into the developing country through the process of duplicating the development that was not environmentally correct. And this meant that it needed to be looked into. All the pollution issues, not just only the deforestation and the migratory peoples issue, but everything else in terms of industries and everything was there. So it needed to be looked into. So a commission was appointed in 1982, which of course was headed by Madame Brundtland, she was the only singular person who had been in a state machinery as an environment minister and was then the Prime Minister of Norway. So she was given the task to come up and answer the question, what went wrong in the assistance provided for the developing countries to become developed and therefore have all the environmental problems. After 5 years, in 1987, they came up with this very, very significant and important publication, Our Common Future. They also came up with a new definition of development, which they called sustainable development. So in this process of sustainable development definition and understanding of the issue, they realized that poverty and unequal distribution and access to resources, poverty still remains, therefore, as a key element that is causing environmental destruction. Unequal distribution of resources, resource extraction, resource use, and access to resources. These three elements are the prime causes for the environmental problems that were in the developed countries and became part of the developing nations in adopting the developed world model of development. So the ultimate cause for the environmental problem, population consumption, are these proximate ones. So we needed to therefore look at a process which needed to be changed. That is why they came up with this new development process termed sustainable development. Development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. The key word here is needs. Now you have to understand that if you are to identify the principal factor that causes a problem, you have to do a good analysis of the problem. And that is what they did quite well and came with this definition, which was already available in the conservation fraternity from 1980. So it was not something extremely new, but important because it is now in the general development arena. And the key word, therefore, is needs. Now, one of the principal problems in the environment use and the consequences comes from two words: needs and wants. Now, time for dinner. As soon as this is over, or you may have had your dinner and you may be seated, satiated and not hungry. Some may be waiting to eat and all of that. Do you have your dinner because you need the dinner or because you want the dinner? When you take your plate, the items on your plate, are they the ones that need to provide the nutrients to your body, or the ones that you want to taste to be happy about your eating? Now, this is a big question and a huge analysis that can bring about something very, very different in your thoughts. We must concentrate on the needs and not on the wants. Just keep that in mind. We take that process into 1992. In 1992, at Rio de Janeiro, in the city where the two extreme lifestyles or life products could be experienced by all the delegates who came there. That is for the reason why Rio de Janeiro was actually selected. This was mentioned by Maurice Strong, who was one of the lead persons in the organization in the United Nations Environmental Program. He was a student in 1970 with Senator Gaylord Nelson. What are the extremes? You have the richest of the rich and the poorest of the poor in one city. And that is what the UNEP or the World Environment Organizers wanted every delegate to experience and see. And at that point, we adopted three very important documents. Earth Summit, Agenda 21. Agenda 21 is the Bible for sustainable development. It provides for, in almost every sector of development, guidelines of how you should approach the environmental issue and the development in a sustainable manner. We'll come back to that as we go along. The second one was the Convention on Biological Diversity, to try and save the biological diversity, which we today very commonly refer to as biodiversity. And the third is the biggest environmental issue of the time, which is climate change. And the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change was adopted, giving the key element pathways how to prevent a climate change disaster. Now you can see that we have neither effectively implemented Agenda 21, nor have we in any sense implemented what was expected in the climate convention of 92. So it's not surprising that we are in this mess today. We go back to Johannesburg after South Africa became free of apartheid. They invited, and that was a good point to try and publicize a new social location. We re-emphasized the Agenda 21, and that is why it's called the World Summit on Sustainable Development. Repeatedly saying that we have not properly implemented the component that were in the Agenda 21 document. And it also brought up the idea at that time, because there was a new Secretary General in the United Nations, Kofi Annan, who was very much concerned about the environment. And he was at that time, way back in 2000, commissioning something that was relevant for us to understand where we were going. And that is referred to as the Millennium or the Millennium Ecosystems Assessment. This assessment was required because we wanted to see whether what we were doing was right. And in order to do that, he wanted to find out why is it that the people are not doing what needs to be done to avert the environmental problems that we are all facing right across the globe. It was what was present in the 70s, 60s and 70s among the developed world, differently in the developing world, and now present in the whole world, and yet having committed to do something to get rid of it through sustainable development, endorsed it as Agenda 21, and yet we are not achieving. So he did this assessment. It was, in our own words, a health check of the planet with respect to development. The partial report contents were already out by 2002 when the when the World Summit for Environment was meeting in Johannesburg. The full report comes out in 2005. But it gave us an insight as to what was happening. All the indicators, it's around 38 or 34 indicators that we were looked into, were negative. There was not a single indicator of the planet showing positive signs other than the increase in population. These are a sample. Carbon dioxide concentrations are amazingly going up, increasing very high, right to the top. And then you see methane, ozone was a big issue, which we have overcome by changing the practices of what chemical we were using that caused the ozone hole, and so on. And everything was bad. Now, carbon dioxide is one of the greenhouse gases, the prime greenhouse gas that is considered as the cause for climate change, the temperatures, all of that. And methane is also one of them. But their relative impacts are different, while CO2 becomes the prime cause. So the bottom line of that assessment was very simple in these words. I will just read to you. We are spending Earth's natural capital, putting such strain on the natural function of the Earth that the ability of the planet's ecosystem to sustain future generations can no longer be taken for granted. At the same time, the assessment shows that the future really is in our hands. We can reverse the degradation of many ecosystem services over the next 50 years, but the changes in policy and practices required are substantial and not currently underway. Not currently underway. Now, along with this came the Millennium Development Goals to be achieved by 2015. In the same year, we put into place the Millennium Development Goals targets and said that we should achieve this by 2015. We come back in 2012, and it was a very significant conference 10 years later. And Maurice Strong, who was already still in the forefront of the organizing, decided that we should go back to Rio. and see whether we have achieved anything of what we saw and put in place as the resolutions for the environmental issues. So it said 2012, Rio plus 20. What we achieved there? For the first time, we talk about institutionalization of sustainable development. Now, wouldn't you imagine, wouldn't you imagine that this should have happened in 1992 when we adopted sustainable development as a means to go forward? Countries were given almost 20 years, and yet the institutional framework within a country to achieve sustainable development did not exist. That is what it means. So what are we talking? And for the first time, Rio plus 20 became a different conference because the decisions, the prime future directions were discussed and decided by the people outside the main conference. Those were brought into the main conference and discussed by the delegates of the countries that go on to these conferences and adopted. And that was what was said. Rio plus 20, the future we want. So the future we want was very different in terms that its prime factorial decisions were taken by the people at large rather than the delegates of the conference or the scientists who were appointed for the purpose over time. So it was very, very significant. And for the first time again, we see a very significant change that we were looking for. During the week, you will probably indulge in some of these discussions about a circular economy, about circularization of the products that we are using in the process of development. The cradle to grave type of development that prevailed in the 60s, 70s, and 80s are today dumped, and we talk about cradle to cradle type of development. And with it comes the economic process. Because in the general principles of economy, it is growth, 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 growth. But we know in nature that that is impossible. In nature, nothing grows unlimitedly. It comes to a plateau at some point of time. So if you have a science that is driving human thoughts and processes and benefits through a theoretical theory that causes unlimited continuous development, it can't fit in the planet. So we needed to therefore change many of those ideologies, and that is where the green economy starts coming in. And in 2012, the green economy or the green economic principles to be taken forward was endorsed, and we are of course still trying to see where we are going. In this process, we see a huge transformation. In 1972, poverty, the cause for environmental degradation. Slip through your mind very carefully. Poverty, the cause for environmental degradation, and we gave the solution development. Come by to 2002, environmental degradation, the cause for poverty. If people were poor today, they are poor because of the degradation of the environment. A complete flip of the coin, turn around, and the answer, the solution, sustainable development. Despite the fact that we miserably failed the Millennium Development Goals, by 2015, we shifted to an inclusive, nobody is left behind ideology and came up with the Sustainable Development Goals that we are expected to achieve by 2030. Unfortunately, we have been dislodged in that pathway because of the COVID for 3 to 4 years, but still we believe that we should strive to achieve that SDG targets by 2030. That is the challenge we have. If not, the environmental degradation will continue to hound us and pull us down, maybe to a point of disaster. And we can see. And among these, the element that seems to be the biggest concern today is the global temperature increase over time and the resulting climate change. So the surface temperatures have continuously increased. The rate of increase is what matters most, because we have had higher temperatures in the past in this planet, but they have increased very, very slowly over 100,000, 200,000 years. But here we are having increments which are far greater in terms of relative increments of any past within these couple of years. And who is causing this? In 1990 to 2012, in the early days, you can see where US was, the developed country was, and where a poor country, China, Russia, India, where they were. But this is where China is today, because all of you know, when China opened up and it changed into becoming developed, it has changed the world in many ways. And today, undoubtedly, it is one of the, I wouldn't say one of the, it is the biggest country that is emitting carbon dioxide and causing or contributing towards much of the environmental issues in the world. Now, that is because they opened up to be developed in the model that we are all running around still. These are lessons to learn. And despite the fact that climate change is causing all of these things, we have climate skeptics who do not agree. I put this here just to make you understand that way back in between 91 to 2012, more than 13,950 peer-reviewed climate articles have come, and only 24 of them reject global warming. Just a decimal less of people who say that this doesn't happen. But then, unfortunately, some of them may be in power, and these things may result in the ultimate science not getting transformed in society for decision making, for change that we all desire for the benefit of the future. So imagine a giant asteroid on a direct collision course with Earth. That is the equivalent of what we face now with climate change. Yet, we are not doing what needs to be done. In the world today, we have clearly understood and accepted that we are not doing what we should be doing to prevent the disasters that we are going to face and have faced within the last 3 to 4 years of climate change repercussions, unless we put our temperature limit at 1.5 degrees centigrade by 2030 or 2050. And we are far short. We are going to not be able to do that. That is what the general consensus is, but let's hope we will still try to achieve it. Among this, the biggest contributor, as I said, is the global carbon dioxide emitter, and buildings do a fantastic job. Almost 47% of carbon dioxide emissions into the atmosphere comes from buildings. Now, for those who are involved in this, learning about it and have learned, we have to now ask our questions. Why is it that we are almost like 50% of the people who are causing the problem for the rest of the world? So don't we have a responsibility? Don't we have to shoulder the responsibility to make a change for this? Transportation 25%, land use changes 22%, and others only 6%. The built environment accounts for approximately, in the US, 40% of global consumption of raw materials generally, and 37% of primary US energy consumption in operations, 68% of US electricity consumption, 12% of US potable water consumption, 40% of US solid waste streams, 35% of US carbon dioxide emission. So in the most developed country, I took this as an example to show you the issues that we are facing with. But today we are talking about something else, but I'm coming to it through the background. A livable world is just fast fading as we wait to take the issue forward. We have three options. We can do what we call business as usual, go ahead and do what we are doing that as we are doing and face the consequences. Or we can think of the technologies and the other technical aspects, which we say geoengineering, manipulations that we are doing, all kinds of things we are doing because we have accelerated science. Now we have 3D printing, which is making 3D materials and all of these things, and artificial intelligence, you name it. So many things are changing so fast, and maybe they will put us in the right place. We have to have faith in some, but we also know that there are a lot of issues in that also. And then, of course, the middle path, which we call the path to sustainability. Manage the human enterprise to take the pressure off the planet. Large changes in lifestyles and technologies will be required for this. So Albert Einstein had said some time ago, problems cannot be solved within the mindset that created. Fortunately, or unfortunately, I would say that many of us, at least I don't accept the fact that I am part of the problem, because I was always seeing something wrong in the development model and was talking against it since 1967. But the majority of the world saw it otherwise, and that is why we are in this mess. So we need to take that responsibility. So given the scale and nature of the environmental problems, we need new mental models and ways of thinking to solve them. Now, are we getting there? Do we have solutions? Yes, we have, provided that we understand what the environment is, because it is this that we are not really understanding. Now, this same question was posed to me way back in 1990s, 96 at least, and then I came up with this publication in 1998 and made it into the publication world by trying to verify what the environment is. Because if you look at the definition in the dictionaries or anywhere, it just the environment is what is around you. But that does not answer the issue of how to get over the problems that we have. So that is why I looked at the environment and considered it to consist of three components: nature as the component into which we evolved as human beings on this planet. And as a human being, we have been ingenious in what we have been doing. And we have done a lot of structural changes to the planet. All of this falls within the built and structured environment. This is only about 12 to 15,000 years old. Prior to that, much of what we did was minor in terms of changes, if at all. They were still within that gambit of nature. We were not outside. And the third component that enabled us to build and structure and change our lifestyles to be what we are today is what I call the theoretical environment. The cultures, the currencies, the money, the economies, the educations, and all of these things, and the facets and things, the learnings that we have in the systems, in the universities and outside in schools, and all of the making us as to who we are. That's the theoretical environment. So when you put the three together, this is what the environment really consists of. There is a natural environment. And if I ask you, do you live in the natural environment? You might have to think very hard, because I will tell you point blank, you're not living in the natural environment. You're all living in a built, structured environment, which has modified in a purposely from the natural world. If you're living in a flat, or you're living in the heart of Colombo, you're living not in the natural world. You're living in a completely structured environment. How have you happened to become in that part of the environment? Because you have endorsed and learned a set of theories that will give you the maximum benefit in that environment, in this built, structured environment, which almost have negatively affected the environment totally. So it's very sad, but that is it. But if you do understand that, then you will see what you can do about it. So having started 2.5 million years ago into the natural environment, we developed ourselves. That is the term we use then. The three elements moved apart. They become gradually artificial in a sense. The theories of life, the structures that we have put together, the materials that have facilitated our life to become better, as we call ourselves, are all some things that were not basically fundamentally available in nature at a point of time. The fossil fuels were not available for us to exploit it till recently, because that is what was underground. But we pulled it out. There was a fuel, the trees, the wood, the peat. We used it. But in the same sense that in using that, we have gradually increased our needs, and more than the needs, the wants, and have resulted in structurally changing the global landscape. And theories have come to help them. And gradually what happened is that today the natural world has shrunk to 12% of the world, as we have been told. The built environment is huge and massive, and it almost goes beyond the capacity of the earth, if you think of it. And the theoretical world in which we live is completely new and artificial, and it's getting more new and artificial with the new technological trends that we are there. So where would the resolutions have to be then? It has to be of understanding the three components of the environment and seeking to bring them back as close as possible. We must try to bring them together as much as possible, which is what we are doing in the process of naturalization, is the word that I gave in 98. But today everybody is talking about it through calling going green. So the building construction and all of us are also trying to go green. Now in this, we have the new definition of all of those consequences, which is called the ecological footprint. Now, the ecological footprint is the amount of damage or the amount of pressure that we are placing upon the planet in our life activities. Sri Lanka is somewhere around 0.08, while the developed countries, especially the West, is 1.5. Globally, we say it is 1.5 because the developing countries' contributions are minimal. All these efforts to talk about greening of housing and constructions and all of these things, which are the themes that are being proposed by the Green Building Council into the future, are all consequential requirements to avert the disasters that we are slowly moving towards. The three elements, climate change, chemicals, and technology. You might look into these three and say, where is plastic here? It comes from the chemicals. That is where we started even recognizing this. This is way back in 2012 or 9, if I can recall. The Times cover said, our filthy seas. If you go back, if you have read Theo Hydral's Ratu, you will know that he said that I would not have even brushed my teeth and washed it with the water that I found in the ocean, because it was so bad. He was at the Sargasso Sea, which is a place where everything sort of swirls around and a muck as it used to be. Today we know that that muck is very much polythene. Everywhere we go, and these caricature cartoons have definitely become what it is. The world is being engulfed by the fish polythene. And then in 2018, we had this National Geographic publication. So what we are talking is pretty old, even though we have not reacted for the purpose, right? Which came out with Planet or Plastic. 18 billion pounds of plastic ends up in the ocean each year. 18 billion pounds of plastic. And that is just the tip of the iceberg. 1/9 is under. Only one part is up there. That is why it's iceberg. So we are not seeing the real full problem, which now we know. We have calculated this today and we know what it is. 46,000 pieces of plastic are floating on every square mile of ocean. Where plastics are accumulated, because the ocean currents cause them to concentrate in these places. This is where Theo Hydral said that I would not even wash my mouth with the water that is in the ocean. Sargasso Sea. But you see all of these 5 places where the ocean currents swirl, the plastics are collecting. Put all these 5 together, it is said that it is bigger than the biggest ever recorded iceberg in the world. Huge. And all of these are artificial, used plastics by us. That is what matters. It is the used discard floats down the rivers, ends up in the ocean. Sri Lanka is number 5. Tiny country, yeah, we are saying, but see, 1.6 million tons of plastic go into the ocean. This is statistics in 2010. Of course, somebody said there was something wrong in this calculation. Like many, we tried to put that into case and say that we have been victimized. Maybe, maybe not, but still for all, I think it's not untrue, I would say, even though the figure may be not true, because when this came out, we did put a rope across the colony, and within a matter of 3 hours, we were able to collect over at least 2 to 3 tons of plastic. It's a huge amount. That's the consequence. It's everywhere in the ocean. So these are the knowledges about plastics. Every year, the world uses 500 billion plastic bags. These are actually 2012 statistics. These are much more today, or 2016, and at that time. In the last decade, we produce more plastic than in the whole last century. 50% of the plastic we use is single use. That is the concerns that we often have, or disposable. We buy 1 million plastic bottles every minute. Every year, we use 17 million barrels of oil to produce plastic bottles for our water. In 2016, 480 billion drinking bottles were sold worldwide. Container. Plastics makes up 10% of all the waste we generate. Today, we know that plastic is everywhere. The idea of microplastics and plastics is in the body today. Last December, it was even detected in a child. Nano levels. It's in the animal flesh. We know that it is in the elephant feces in this country. Macroplastics is in the elephant feces close to the city. But microplastics is available in the feces of elephants in the national park. This was a preliminary study that has opened our eyes, and we hope to do a national survey to confirm what we have got. Then the question is, how did this plastic get into the elephant? Is it just purely by eating garbage? But then where there was no garbage, also from our samples, it says it is available. So there's a lot of concern that is slowly coming up. We are the first generation to know we are destroying the world accordingly. Now this is 2023. That is this year. Plastic Waste Makers Index is something that is being done every year by the Mindero Foundation. And this year's index is what we should all think about for this World Environment Day, because it's the theme is plastic. What are the key findings? Supply and demand for single-use plastics. There are more single-use plastics than ever. An additional 6 million metric tons generated from 2019 to 2021, almost all still entirely made from fossil fuel. The bigger narration, despite rising consumer awareness, corporate attention, and regulation, there is more single-use plastic waste than ever before. An additional 6 million metric tons generated in 21 compared to 2019. Still almost entirely made from fossil fuel-based virgin feedstocks. 20 list of petrochemical companies producing virgin polymers bound for single-use plastic remain effectively unchanged. Second, cradle-to-grave greenhouse gas emissions from single-use plastics continue. Narration: single-use plastic is not only a pollution crisis, but also a climatic one. Cradle-to-grave scopes 1, 2, and 3 greenhouse gas emissions from single-use plastics in 2021 were equivalent to approximately 450 million metric tons of carbon dioxide, more than the total greenhouse gas emissions of the United Kingdom. Now, these are real science that you have to know of this year. So it is something that has happened up to the end of 2022. Recycling developments. We say the answer, we need to recycle, reuse, or stop using. Which is it? Recycling is failing to scale fast, and the marginal activity for the plastic sector. The detailed narration: recycling is failing to scale fast enough and remains at most a marginal activity for the plastic sector. From 2019 to 21, growth in single-use plastics made from virgin polymers was 15 times that from recycled feedstocks. Only strong regulatory interventions with economic incentives can solve what amounts to market failures. The fourth finding, circularity ambition, because we said we are trying to look at reuse, economic, circularity, all these things. Some positives are emerging from an industry that remains completely dependent on fossil fuels and continues to fall short on circularity. We have to understand that the world is trying to stop or at least come to zero in the use of fossil fuel to avert the climate disaster. Within the petrochemical industry, there are 2 outliers, 2 out of more than 20 plus. Taiwan's Far Eastern New Century and Thailand's Indorama Ventures are making strong commitments to recycling and are also now producing on par recycled polymers at scale. The big companies are still going ahead and doing what they should not be doing to keep producing these polymers for the purpose. So what is the scale of the problem? You can understand, but here are some further values to think about. 430 million tons of plastic a year, 2/3 of which are short-lived products and which soon become waste. Yet current commitments made by governments and industry will only reduce the annual volume of plastic flowing into the ocean by 8% by 2040. 8% by 2040. What about the 92%? The social and economic costs of plastic pollution will reach up to $600 billion per year. If you have any knowledge about economics, these greenhouse gas emissions linked to the life cycles of plastic represented 3.4% of the global total in 2019. In a business as usual scenario, plastic could emit 19% of global greenhouse gas emissions by 2040. Here we are trying to cut down the emissions of carbon dioxide and greenhouse gases, but we are still going to contribute it through the plastics. Widespread plastic waste results in damage to ecosystems and human health worth $300 billion to $600 billion per year. And very interesting. Here is an article, or it was a book actually, it's a book. I have this bad habit of looking into the history when I'm given a title to talk about, or at least when I felt that I should talk about plastics in the building construction. Plastics in building, April of 1955. The use, past and present, and the potentialities of plastics in building as reported at a conference concluded by the Building Research Institute October 27 and 28, 1954 at the Chamber of Commerce of the United States in Washington, D.C. In almost every aspect of building, the architect, the builder, and the contractor are hearing about made of other building materials combined with plastic for their consideration in design and construction. Since the performance of any material or product is of constant concern to the building professions, it is natural any new materials available for building purposes. While some plastic material have been used for many years by the building industry, the tremendous development of the plastic industry since World War II has focused attention on its possibilities in the construction field. The plastics industry believes that used correctly, its product have a place in the great building market. Plastics industry technologists want the construction industry to have a true account of the qualifications and potentialities of their materials for appropriate use in buildings. So very positive promotional content into the future. Plastic used as building or construction material, volume 2, 1975, December 1977. Another very interesting, I skimmed through all of these. And then we have the issues of today being highlighted by the plastic construction people. Using plastic wastes in construction, opportunities and challenges, a publication that came out in 2022. Is now looking at the current trends and problems that we are facing with plastics and asking ourselves, can we become the positive contributors to change this into the future? Urbanization and the evolution of people's lifestyles have a significant impact on the quantity of waste that is generated and dumped each year. In addition, due to the emergence of the COVID-19 pandemic, the use of masks has increased significantly, and the amount of plastic waste generation worldwide has doubled. These wastes have had a negative impact on the environment and have attracted the attention of many departments. Faced with both increasing amounts of generated plastic waste and the growing interest of sustainability, the construction sector must take an advantage using recycled plastic waste in construction applications to reduce the negative impacts of the generated plastic waste while meeting future infrastructure demands. I will leave into your thoughts. Are we doing it? Plastic wastes are one of the big solid wastes that threaten our world's sustainability. Annual almost 300 million tons of plastic waste are generated. Singh and Sharma, 2016. Utilizing plastic waste in construction not only protects the environment, but it also lessens the environmental hazard that these plastic manufacturers offer to the environment. Using plastic in the construction industry might also aid in the industry's environmental goals as well. By reducing the quantity of new plastic processed and generated, reusing plastic waste results in significant reduction in energy use and carbon emissions. These are the challenges ahead of us. What are the plastics? Construction applications of various different kinds that are there. For what are they being used? Concrete, pavements, building plasters, blocks, mortar, asphalt. All of that is there. It can be said that PET, that is the petroleum products, is the most popular plastic in construction application, in concrete, in mortar, in building plasters, block pavements, where PVC is the least applied plastic in construction, concrete and mortar. Moreover, high density, low density, and so on and so forth, also used frequently in the construction industry. So it is being used, but my question is, where is it being used in Sri Lanka? How intensely are we using it in Sri Lanka to make it a negative or at least balance of the waste throwaway that we see in our waste? Can we find ourselves in the industry looking for means to sort that plastic into building construction? That is my argument from having read. So where are all this plastic waste coming from? We know where it comes from when you look at it. It is all from our day-to-day activities or things that are trying to give our benefits. What are we trying to do with it? Where does this plastic end up? Only 9% recycled. 46%, the majority is landfill, just filling land and closing it up. And we know that it doesn't deteriorate at the rate that we would like it to deteriorate. Mismanaged, uncollected, 17% incinerated for energy generation and so on. It's a huge issue. Pollution from plastic, a threat to nature and society. All this I have already said, but I am throwing in for you to look at. These are all literature available to show increase in plastic produced by 2030 will reach over 407 million, over 40% will be the amount that we will produce by then. Yeah, 40% more from what it is today, right? And it's huge. So the question is, when there is more single-use plastic waste than ever before, 139 million tons in 2021. Despite rising consumer awareness, corporate attention and regulation, an additional 6 million metric tons of waste, which we recognize. You see, these people are still doing it. ExxonMobil, Sinopec, Dow, Indorama is the only one who's trying to do some changes. We heard so from the literature. And see, the top 20 list of petrochemical companies producing virgin polymers bound for single-use plastic remains effectively unchanged since 2019. Knowing the problem, they are still producing. Why? We are using it, and we are using it for more and more different kinds of things, right? So all of these things are contributing, right? These things were mentioned earlier. I'm just clicking off through, right? Recycling is failing to scale fast enough and remains a marginal activity for plastic sector, right? So we have to be conscious about what we are doing, and only being conscious of what we are doing, we can change. Recycling plastic waste materials for building and construction materials, there has been reviews, there has been publications. This is one in 2006, and I'm sure there has been much more, right? And I thought it was interesting. I downloaded quite a lot, and then from that, this sounded nice, so I'm putting it to you. The production of plastic wastes is a growing environment problem in the era of industrialization and economic growth due to the varied applications of polymeric materials. The waste, which are mainly landfill, pollute land and waste resources due to the toxic and resistant to biodegradation nature of their components. Therefore, innovative approaches to channel plastic waste away from landfills are imperative. In this mini review, recycling of plastic waste for material use in the building and construction sector as a viable solution to the environment equation was focused. Using pre-existent empirical studies, it was established that plastic can be used alone or in combination with other materials at varied percentage compositions to make various building and construction materials. These include bricks, blocks, tiles, asphalts, bitumen, geosynthetics, door panels, insulation materials, cementitious composites. These applications are enhancers to environmental sustainability as they reduce the mining and transport of conventional building and construction materials, which results to atmospheric pollution. It was noted that there was need to commercialize the applications by advancing to better plastic harvesting technologies and cost-effective recycling approaches for waste with variety of plastics, assessing the life cycle of recycling plastic material for building and construction in addition to devising regulations to standardize the process involved was recommended to validate the ability of the advances of enhanced sustainability published in 2020. 2022. So here are some statistics too about it and the references given in the publication and all of that into what material it has been converted and how and what is the percentage of plastics in it. So types of plastic used in making buildings and construction materials and their uses. You can recycle the plastic waste for various products and all of that is available. Plastic waste recover building constructions, different kinds. It's possible. These are some pictures of it being into bricks and done. Plastics are used with other building materials, foundry sand, recycled glass, clay sands, construction, demolition waste to make bricks of this nature and constructions. Bituminous road paving and all of that, it is being used now, but where is Sri Lanka in that picture, right? Plastic waste is making a cementous composite, aggregates and binders put together, and it is mixed with Portland cement and you can use it. You can from this to this, and then you have a product at the end. Where can you put all of these things, right? Waste in the what you call the plastic timber idea. There are of course reservations about it, but still it is there for us to look at the strengths and of the products and see how it can get done. Are we having anybody? I don't know. I'm just posing the questions to all of you guys who are in the industry to find out whether these things are available in this country, and if so, where is it being used and how extensively it is being used, because it is the Green Building Council which should be promoting it. So application of plastic waste in the construction material for sustainable development. Again, a second review that came up in just a couple of months ago. You can see it was published in February of 2023. The development of a sustainable ecosystem in the present period is seriously threatened by the effective disposal of plastic waste. This work aims to reduce the burning issues that lead to environmental pollution by reusing plastic waste bags as building materials for sustainable development. In this review study, a modified plastic mixer is created by combining shredded plastic waste bags with hot aggregates and sand. Comprehensive research has been done on the use of plastic waste as binder, aggregate, fine aggregates, modifiers, or replacement for cement and sand in the production of bricks, tiles, concrete, roadways. Additionally, the review of impact plastic waste addition on tensile characteristics, water absorption, durability has been extensively examined. So this is again 2023, right? So these things are happening now. So looking at nature, you produce a stone of this nature, and why not? We can do many. These are some pictures that I picked up from the internet to show you that things like these things have happened. Of course, it may not look fancy, but it does. But then it clicked to me many years ago in 1990, when the polythene bottles just sort of came into the market and things like that for drinking bottles and things like that. At Randanigala Training Center, I built a retention wall out of the bottles in the same manner, right? So I don't know why I did it, but I thought, no, yes, that's something that you can do without throwing it or burning it, and the wall still exists, right? So it can be done. Do we want to go to these extremes? That is a question that we need to think about, the beauty of it, the process of it, and structuring it. But in this country, I believe we should become serious about the amount of plastics that we are producing, and banning might not be the answer. Reuse it as much as possible into the process of enabling it to be used for structuring and using things like that, maybe in public locations or privately or something, to make things happen. So these are all the pictures of where plastics have been used, but we know it can be cut down into smaller pieces, individual pieces, and then using it in as aggregates and so on and so forth. There can't be any different if you can use it with stones. But of course, we have to do the science. Much of the science has been done, but yet let's see what we can do in this country. Who knows? Our earth might be different from what it is in India, and so on and so forth. There is no planet B, and unless we are willing to act now to resolve the problems that we have, we will not be able to beat the plastic pollution. And the primary thing, of course, is that as individuals, we must try to shun or go away from plastic. And that is what we have to try to achieve as much as possible. this very computer from which I am talking to you is a plastic product of some nature. So how do I not use the computer to talk to you? So we know our limitations. That is the key thing that we need to know. But that does not mean that at the end of the day, I will throw this into a place where it has no purpose. I will try to see which is what we don't have. So it is our responsibility to find out how we can create the mechanism that is needed for the purpose of recycling. And if so, reuse, but more, if you can't do that, recycle or use it for something else. And how much of that is happening in this country? I know some things are happening in Moratuwa, maybe some things are happening in Peradeniya and many of the other university laboratories in the engineering faculties. But is it happening in the field? I may be wrong, but yet I would like to know, where is it happening that is providing an impact of reducing the voluminous plastic that is heading into the environment, not for it to go and end up as landfill, but for a better purpose. So I think, thank you very much. I've given somewhat an outsider, but a more concerned environmentalist, because plastics is not the subject of mine. Yet, I thought I will take up the challenge and put you in perspective of the reality of what is happening in the world in terms of what I can gather and read from what was available to me in the things, because I have been trying to change the attitude of using plastics for many years. Refuse to take a plastic bag wherever I can. And in that way, there are times when I have no choices, but that is going to has become very, very minuscule and small, and it's not the norm. So that's what we need to think of, each of us. We should not make it the norm to use it, but it must be an abnorm if it has to ever be used. Can we all work towards that? Commit ourselves for a plastic somewhat free world in the future, which may not ever happen, but think of it, zero plastic for the future, and keep that first step, commitment for the future today. Thank you very much. Theruwan Sarnai, Subhanagatayak, Vasanawan.
Thank you very much, sir. So, it's time
Any
to
questions? If there is time, I am ready to try and answer if I can. I'm sure there must be some technical personnel on plastics in among our audience here. Okay, let me look at the chat box.
if you have any question, please unmute yourself and ask the questions.
Okay, it appears that we are, yes.
Yes, sir. I think there is no questions for the audience. So
hello, sir.
Yeah, somebody's.
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for your presentation. And I have one question, sir. I am a professional landscape architect, and I want to know from which institution that we can get some knowledge about about materials, how make the materials, like using plastic, and like which institution you nominate to get that information and knowledge?
Right, that's a good question, but I must honestly say that I am not conversant to know where it is. But I would believe that if you check with the Mortua University, I think Professor Ajit Dialvis, who does a lot of recycling materials of plastics and things like that, would be in a position to help you at the University of Mortua, because I know he had produced some files and things like that. But here, what we are talking about, building construction material, but I would put it into the lap of the Green Building Council to actually update the information requirement of things like that. That should be one of the tasks of the Green Building Council, to recognize who are the persons who are doing the very thing that you asked. Thank you for asking that question, so that you may refer to them and get what is required. But a short one is, try to contact Professor Ajit Dialvis, and I'm sure he will try to help you.
Okay, thank you, sir.
There is a post there. When we make plastic blocks or bricks, again, carbon dioxide emission is there. Yes, that is true. This is why. Then why should we be using plastics at all? You see, when we breathe also, we emit carbon dioxide. So you should not be alive either. Right? These are what we refer to as the relativity of environmental discussions. One must not think of ambiguity of the issues when we are trying to resolve a problem. You see, we are the cause for the problem. There is no question. But we can't go back to being what we were 15,000 years ago or 1 million years ago. We have to accept the fact that we are what we are, but we can't be the cause for making it worse than what we are. So the answer to your question is that it's your thinking that you have to first sort out yourself, right? Everything that we do is an issue in the environment today. Living is a carbon dioxide emitter. So are we trying to say that we should not live? No. We must know how we can reduce it from sources that may add to it to complicate it. And that's why we say, if you can go away from fossil fuels, if you can, the theme that is developing in Canada and very much in the UK is a 15-minute lifestyle. What does the 15-minute lifestyle tell you? That within 15 minutes, you should get access to what basically you require. Walk up to 15 minutes and get what you want. If you want to get something, if you have to go from Kandy to Colombo to get what you want and get back, see how much of carbon dioxide you are going to emit, even if you walk. So that's why the Canadian environmental people came up with the 15-minute lifestyle. Because you can't have the shop in your home. The shopkeeper might not, and you may not want it, and the shopkeeper will not find it good enough. But if you want something from the shop, because you can't have everything in your house either. You can't be self-sufficient in everything that you want in your life. But if you can get access to everything that you want in your life within 15 minutes of walking and getting back, you're reducing that amount of travel, CO2 emissions, and so on. And this is the way to think of it. So your question is good, but there is a weakness in that question. Think about not the weakness, but the positive aspects of it. You are committed to reduce the carbon dioxide emissions. How can I do it better? So conversion of it into something with a minimum amount of carbon dioxide emissions is the challenge. Why are we going for electric vehicles? Who says that electric vehicles are not an environmental problem? It is a problem. Because what do you do with the battery when it is dead? Does it mean, therefore, that you should not go for an electrical vehicle to reduce the carbon dioxide emissions in your transportation? So think about it in that way. And then you will find that you become even more sensitive and even more responsive for the action. So it's a very good question that opens up a lot of these concerns, which is one of the problems that we have when we try to promote ourselves to become environmental conscious and solutions of the masses? Thank you for that question. Okay, Sandeep, I think we have exhausted ourselves.
Yeah, sir. So now shall we wind up
So
the
thank you very
session?
much all
Yeah.
who participated.
There's no planet B. We must join hands to save our beautiful planet, as there is no other place in the universe so beautiful, so vibrant, and so lively. So let's be more responsible. So thank you very much, sir, for taking time from your busy schedule and sharing your valuable knowledge for us. You are always at something new and something new knowledge to us, and your vast knowledge is very valuable to us. So thank you again. Thank you very much, sir, again. And
I will send you the PowerPoint as usual.
okay, sir.
Then you
Thank
can
you.
share it if agreed.
And thank you all for being a great audience today. And I will end this session today by inviting you all to join the panel discussion on waste management towards a circular economy transition to be held on 8th of June, Thursday. The panel discussion to be held on that day will undoubtedly be an interesting one like today's session. So let's meet up 8th of June and 7 p.m. with the panel discussion. Have a great day. Thank you all.